banner that is that is hanging in the junior um, that that accomplishment. Others within the history of Huron athletics that have had state championships. Won wrestling, girls tennis, boys track, and now boys diving. So congratulations.
Let's get a picture of them.
Yeah, do you want to bring it back here?
We can. What's easiest?
Yeah, bring them over here.
Over.
Just a picture with the board too.
Thank you for keeping me straight. That's hard. Yeah. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for being here. Thanks again. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Congratulations.
See you Tuesday. Attending this meeting.
Sorry. Sorry. Next, we have Assistant Superintendent of Academic Affairs, Dr. McDonald.
Good evening, everyone. A couple of things that I want to update the board about. Um, the track project being one of those. On the 4th of April, we met with Sportsworks in Vasco for the pre-construction meeting. We met over at the high school, over Mr. Camilla's office to go through logistics. So we met Glenn. He is the project manager for Vasco. We threw Glenn a bunch of questions about how things would look and how things would work and what we needed to do. And then we took a walk outside. So, as a result of that meeting, today we sent out a letter. Didn't want to send it on spring break while people were gone, so it hit their inboxes this morning. We sent it to families, and then we also shared it with Parks and Rec with the city so that they could also let people know that after the Artie Miller, there shall be no more people on the track. So, um, the coaches will be packing up the track after the invite. Boosters, we made them also aware that if there's any signage they want on the fences, they need to pick it up before 7 o'clock on the 24th. So that is go time. That parking lot to the north of the visitor stands from the ticket booth over to the practice fields will be the staging area and where they will bring the trucks in. So that will be closed to students. So Mr. Lamb is working on that one now to inform the students. We're also going to mention to faculty they're more than welcome to park there, but they're probably also going to get a little dusty too. So um, the track, the field, all of that area inside the 8-foot fence will be off limits until July 30th. Or if Mother Nature cooperates and we get the punch list done, we'll get a go thumbs up from Vasco, then we can open it sooner. But one thing Glenn was very kind to point out, and something that we've been reiterating, is there are two 21-day curing periods in this project that might not look like there's a whole lot going on at the track facility. It doesn't mean people can get on it. It means please don't get on it because that's the stuff that we need to harden and have that surface cure properly. So they'll be installing fences during some of that curing period, the 4-foot fence and whatnot, but it is off limits. We will be able to allow the kids in the locker room underneath the home side. They will have a dedicated construction barrier that the kids have to stay within, get their stuff, and get out. They won't be able to exit that north side doors, but then they can still use that parking lot for track and whatnot, getting on buses, whatever they need to do out that back way. So Very excited about that. Over break, I'll put up our signs, and then we will add on the 24th some closed signage. He'll turn keys over to the construction crew and whatnot, and they will get started. So very excited about that. Just keep our fingers crossed that Mother Nature does cooperate for the length of the project, and hopefully, if she does, she didn't today, but we can get it open sooner rather than later. So that's what we're shooting for. So the second update I wanted to give you is a little twofold, and I know Paul's going to talk about this too, about curriculum purchases. So all curriculum has a life cycle, whether it's standards-based, skills-based, whatever. As we are cleaning out closets, we are finding materials that are well past their shelf life. In some cases, predate some of our students. And whatnot. So we are looking at, there's a gentleman that works with a company, he's been into all the buildings, that perhaps will be able to sell some of this curriculum back. Perhaps not, and that's okay too, because some of it is very well loved. Some of the textbooks can no longer be rebound. And so with that as the case, we are also in the 5th year of our purchasing cycle, which means social studies. And so I've met with a couple of the social studies teachers to look at materials. With COVID, a lot of online materials were created by teachers. Access to primary source documents are pretty ready available through the Chromebooks and the internet. So we're not looking at your typical textbook series, if you will. We're looking for things that are more timely updated and whatnot, especially at the high school. The 5th grade teachers, bless their hearts, we were looking at material, and I was like, this stuff is so old. Again, can't be rebound. History in 5th grade, our kids, it's Western history. We should be up to date. So we reached out to a couple of different companies, and the teachers, I'm excited for them. They're not really interested in traditional textbooks anymore, especially with the kids having access to the Chromebook. And we reached out to a couple of vendors that are Ohio specific. So that's very exciting, and that stuff started arriving, of course, over spring break. So they were welcomed back to their classrooms with sample material. So not all grade levels are getting social studies materials. We're hitting strategic ones. And like I said, a lot of the teachers were good with what they have. It's aligned. We're getting results that we want on the state tests, especially at high school government and whatnot. So we're very excited. As I mentioned in previous meetings, that reading and math have been were our primary focus. We were able to pick up science and social studies. We'll again be picking up reading and math in the next couple of years, but this completes our first official cycle, if you will. So I'm excited about that and the work that the teachers have put in to date. So, any questions?
Thank you very much. Good, Marco.
So, I have a shorter report this month, and I'm almost out of voice already. So, I did pass out this. I've updated it again Monday since last week when I sent out the. It's a draft of the 5-year forecast for May, which when I started this year, November, there were a lot of unknowns, and that one was designed. It didn't include any facility project in that. So now that May is usually the correction, but the numbers are more targeted towards our spending this year rather than historicals. And as we project out going into next year, the facilities and renovations, we just got those numbers for the high school projects a couple weeks ago. So next year we're looking at, and I think that's a pretty strong number. I need to work on my revenue side of this, but we're going to run a deficit of about 1.6 million. So we're kind of falling back into the pre-COVID cash burn, basically, is what it is, where our expenses are outpacing our revenue. And if you look at the revenue line, which is 208, that's total revenue, that's from all sources, it's relatively stagnant. The community has reached the 20 mil floor for residential. We were already there for class 2 property. So we're going to see a stagnation of our biggest source of revenue, which is property tax. At best, our state revenue sources are going to remain stagnant. Our expenses are going to continue to outpace revenue. So, as I came on, I think everyone knew that we were going to need a levy. Now that we factor in, it's consolidating. It's great for long-term savings, and it fits, where we are as a district. But there is that upfront cost of the consolidation. So it will save money. It's the appropriate thing to do, but it has a short-term cost. So, I've been pouring up and down looking for holes where we're leaking out money, but the district was pretty lean. We're not running a deficit because we're spending too much. Spending levels, at the buildings, everywhere, everyone's been on pace this year. It's just, for lots of reasons, the expenses are going to continue to go up. And so, as I sent out earlier, we need to start planning a ballot issue as soon as possible, just to prevent. So we're solid for next year with our cash reserves. Going into fiscal 25, though, things start to get pretty thin, and I think we could probably, as we are now, without any changes, we could make it through fiscal 25. But then going into 26, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. So as levies work, the money just doesn't come instantly. So the sooner we can organize, the better. Or else we'll have to look at making changes at some point in the next 18 months. So that's where we are. I'll have a broader look next month at the full forecast. This is just, I was just basically plopping in big numbers in areas. And I do need to work out the revenue side some more as we get more information. It does look good. This House Bill 1 stuff looks like it's lost a lot of steam, those that were supporting it. So long term, that's good for us. But that's where we are. We're solid going into next year. It's a big cash burn. It really is. So again, this number, the 1.6, will be offset by any proceeds from the sale of the Shawnee property. I can't put that in the forecast until it happens. Mr. Don Sweeting's here. We're going to talk to him later. So that's not in the forecast. Since the last time I sent this out, I did work in some of the grant money. I'll continue to look for ways to cut costs or grant opportunities, but this is pretty much where we're heading. In other news, to follow up with Dr. McDonald, so I'm asking for board permission to create an 070 budget stabilization fund, which it just goes along with our planned curriculum purchases. This includes both Dr. McDonald, the scheduled curriculum needs. Curriculum is a wider, it's not just books anymore, but this is in the consent. It also includes the plan to replace Chromebooks at 2 grade levels per year that Dr. Tatman and Lyle worked out. So this sets aside the money in a reserve fund. It becomes encumbered and kind of protects that money. Should we get into a really bad with board action, we could always pull money out. But this is a formal way to set aside the money that we know that we have to spend. Curriculum it's in the collective bargaining agreement. It's part of, it's a planned thing, so it makes sense to plan this. Last month we did a 070 for the replacement of the field and other needs at the football stadium. So this is just another one of those. Similar but totally different is the 007 fund for the Greg and Suzanne Thaxton Scholarship. This is a scholarship that's been going now for a while. They're going to move it into the school. So, and I did explain in the attachment, I typed it up formally. There's no changes to the actual winners, but as it comes into the school, it's a little unique that the Thaxton family donates stock, which then we receive and sell immediately. The Nordson Corporation matches twice what's donated. So this scholarship itself has grown, and I've worked with Mr. Thaxton a few times exactly, and I typed up in the document exactly how it's, because it's unique. So, years from now, people will know exactly what to do. And this, he did want his own fund. He didn't want this going in the general fund. He kind of wanted it set up. So that's what the 007 fund does. It protects things like that. The chart of athletic accounts is done. Those will go live July 1st. This month, a cup report came out. Board Docs isn't great with Excel. If you just would Google cup report Ohio, but it shows you. And personally, I don't think it has a lot of value. It has some value. It's a public-facing document, though. So if you wanted to compare Huron schools to other schools, you can. That's what's good about the spreadsheet. It doesn't. I would have gave you a copy, but it just doesn't come out good on a PDF. You can use the tool to compare us to any other school, and it shows you. So the report itself will show you similar district, but that doesn't always mean it's a comparable. It's basically demographic. It shows you that we are very well property value to student. That's why we get so little help from the state, because on paper it looks like we have just tons of money. And other items, we did have some donations this month. 3 for the Woodlands Gardens, 2 for anonymous sources, 1 came from Michael and Stephanie Holtz, and then the Cleveland Foundation, the Bruce and Virginia Cheney Scholarship Fund donated $2,615. Total for the year now is over $103,000 in donations. So, unless you have any questions on my.
Would you rather have questions now or under your treasurer?
We can wait
Okay.
to vote when it comes
Okay.
to the vote for that.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
All right, good evening, everybody. So first, I'd like to start by recognizing the person to my right here. A couple board meetings ago, board policy was approved for a student liaison, and so we have our first Brave student to pilot tonight. Her name's Lucy Watson. She's a junior at our high school. And do you want to say anything else about your son? Okay, can you just share one thing? So I asked Lucy, well, she's been on student council for a while, ever since like what, 6th, 7th grade? Yeah. Yep. And then I said, well, what made you want to be brave enough to be the first? And go ahead, share. Why did you want to be here tonight?
I like student council. I want to be like that.
And then she also said, I'm not really even sure what happens at a board meeting. So tonight she'll get a good experience. Right? But I want to thank Lucy. Thank you for being here. I'm not. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, Lucy.
You go till 11. You don't have to stay the whole time.
We'll find a natural break for you. Fade away. But I want to thank Lucy. And then Ms. Sadowski, the student council advisor at the high school, she helped me connect with the students. And like I said, they drafted, what would the involvement be and how would that look? They definitely want board members' input too. So maybe now or later in the meeting, if you want to share some other ideas, that'd be good. Lucy did confirm that she'll go back and at their next student council meeting share out what she learned here, so the students are aware of what's going on. So that's excellent. The next I have is an update on security features of the district. So the first is last month the board approved that radio purchase through Vasu Radios. So they're working to get us on their installation schedule. That'll be sometime this summer, where they'll install a repeater, and then we'll have safety service quality radios where we can talk between campuses and we can talk directly with dispatch, safety services, PD, fire, sheriff. Also, I've been running around. The custodians at all the buildings helped me a lot by taking measurements, but then I ran around 2 weeks ago with one rep who does the security film on windows. And so we're looking to add that security film on the various entryways of the schools. Talking with Officer Lobsinger, McCormick's a good example. He's like, you don't really need it on the classroom windows because if you just look at the natural design of the building, there's several steps up before you get towards those windows. and so the person's looking up. They don't see too much of the classroom. They see mostly classroom ceilings. You know, we do have low windows in some of our other buildings, but we're starting with the doorway entryways, and then we'll see what more we can afford through that safety grant money and other resources to get those done. I also, Al Millis and I met with Capital Aluminum, and we are working to get an estimate for an additional secure entryway at Woodlands. So when you come into Woodlands, the first set of doors are unlocked, so you're not in the rain when you're waiting for the secretary to buzz you in. And then the next set she has to buzz you in for, but that's an opportunity where you could go straight into the hallways and see classrooms, or you could turn into the office. So there'll be a third set of doors there that'll be locked, and it'll force you into the office to sign in, do the visitor procedures before you can go further into the building. So we're working on that. And then lastly, we're working with our architect, AVG, on a secure entranceway at the high school. So moving the current high school entranceway to the north side of the campus where where the counselor's office is now. So that would become the main entrance during the school day. You would get buzzed in and then buzzed in directly into what would be the new main office. And again, you do the visitor procedures, get the badge before you go further into the building. The current main entrance would remain there for community events, evenings, afternoons. So if you're coming to a sporting event, you don't have to go all the way down and around. It's a natural entryway there. So we have that going on. So a lot to go with there, and most, if not all of those projects are being funded from that state safety grant that DeWine renewed. So that's excellent. And then the last is on the agenda. You'll see termination of supplemental and stipend contracts. That's an annual process that we do. So all 22-23 school year supplementals and stipends are being terminated effective June 30th of 2023. And then in May, you'll start to see supplementals and stipends for the new school year start to be awarded. We like to do that in May so that that gives the treasurer's office time to get those contracts out to staff before they go for the summer. Gives them that peace of mind that they have that contract, and gives us a little savings on the postage. So that's always good. There is one supplemental on the agenda for tonight. That is for next school year. That's for our new boys basketball coach. So as most people know, Bobby James stepped down. So we had an interview process, started with the athletic director, and then a committee was the next round. Coaches and staff interviewed, and then the final round was with me. And the candidate that we have, I would just say that in the final interview, I asked questions. The two big ones I asked is, why do you want to be in Huron? Why do you want to be a coach for Huron? And he went immediately to the tradition of excellence, the commitment from the students, and the expectations of the community to develop winning programs. And so I believe our candidate will be able to do that. And then the other key question I asked is, after your long tenure as a head basketball coach for Huron, what do you want people to say your legacy is? And again, he went right to that I developed athletes, that I developed young men, prepared them for success in life beyond high school. Wins and losses, sure, wins and losses are important, but the key is that I'm developing athletes and young men. And so I thought those were two really good answers. But that's on the agenda as well. Sorry, I'm not choked up. I'm just.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last is that a couple meetings ago, Holly Charville's resignation was approved by the board. And so on this agenda for the board's approval is the employment of her replacement, a special ed coordinator. This candidate is coming from the classroom as an intervention specialist. She did excellent in her interviews, both the round with just me and then the round with the committee. We had other principals, the Secretary of Student Services, we had teachers, Speech Path, all participate, and she came hands down as the strongest candidate in the pool that we had. So we're excited to welcome her too. And unless there's any questions, that's my report for tonight.
I have a question, and it's not, I don't think anything that can be answered right now, but has there been any consideration for some of the proposed construction at the high school and maybe rolling that into bigger master facility plans.
Yeah, so for bigger master facility plans, that's going to be a community engagement piece, and we need to do that. To say we'll do that in the next 5 school weeks here in the spring, that's not going to happen. So my goal is potentially in the summer, but more likely in the fall, we start those community engagement pieces. As far as the project at the high school with the secure entranceway, whether we're at that high school for the next 4 to 5 years or for the long haul, I think that that security entranceway is something that's overdue as far as it needs to be done. And also the state safety grant money helping offset those costs, make it manageable to do. As far as the board office moving from this location into that high school location, I see that. I asked the architect, even if the rest of this building was gone and a field, could this part of the building stand alone? And they said, with some modification of the utility accesses, like electrical and that, it could. So that has the potential to stay, even if the whole rest of that campus is taken down. It could stay as the long-term board office, and then the second floor above it could be like professional development spaces and stuff like that. So is it officially part of the master facility plan? No, but does it have life beyond the next 4 to 5 years? It can, for sure, yeah.
Just thinking from the funding standpoint, if there were going to be a larger capital project, and putting that money in, was there a possibility the proposed project at Woodlands was interesting, and would there be any possibility of doing something like that at the high school to explore? It kind of like once getting in, because I understand like where the office is, if it was restricted access to this part but not this.
Yeah,
or something
so
like that.
to try to replicate what we're looking
It's
to do
easier
at Woodlands, yeah, that's a major throughway from academic hallway into the cafeteria and gym, like constantly all day. Kids are going back and forth, so it would be hard to restrict that as a cutoff. So it's not really feasible. Yep.
Okay, so at this time, we are going to go in executive session, or we need a motion to go in executive session for the reason of sale of property, competitive bidding, and people to be included with the board would be Dr. Tatman and I'm sorry,
Mr. Don Sweden.
Mr. Sweeting.
So moved.
I second it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Would there be any way to vote on the supplementals before we went into executive session? I just feel like we have some folks here hanging in for a specific action. I don't want
Yeah,
to
that's a
like
good
cause.
point.
I'm just saying I hate to hold people here longer than they have to.
Well, I don't know who are we holding up?
I'm just gonna guess.
The coach?
But there's some folks, yeah.
Right.
Well, but I mean,
Coach Miller gave
If I could
do
suggest,
it separately.
yeah, we'll just pull it out.
Just pull it out of that.
Yeah, but there's a,
We have a motion and a second on.
We can, yes.
so right now,
We do have a second, so
let's,
Take a vote.
we'll have to
Take a
well,
vote. Turn it down.
And we need to say no.
it's okay.
But
It's also because some people
Yeah.
already voted. So,
good.
Mrs. Hartley.
I'll say no, but I already cast an online vote. Can you redo it?
I changed it.
Okay.
They won't let me change it. I'll try. I took. Okay. So you can take away a vote once it started. All right. So Mrs. Hartley,
No.
Mrs. Mast,
No.
Dr. LaFay. Mrs. Henners.
No.
Mr. Jones.
So, we are going to move to,
If you wanted to do the whole consent, and then we can go into executive, that would work. Yeah, we can do 6, 7, and 8. Well, unless there's
can I have a motion to vote on consent agenda 6, 7, and 8? Is that right?
that's what we're
Session.
going to executive session.
Do
That's
8H.
true.
We vote on 8H.
Pull one out. You can pull one out, one item out.
But we should have done that before. But H, so we're gonna vote on just H? Everybody else is, okay,
So moved.
I'm not sure that's proper.
See, we weren't joking when we said.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. DeMarco.
Sorry, who made the
I did. I seconded.
so Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Mrs. Mast,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay,
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes. Congratulations. Okay. Now back to item 5. Is there a motion for executive session to go into, for the reason of sale of property and competitive bidding with Mr. DeMarco, Dr. Tapman, Sweetie, invited also.
So moved. I'll second again.
After we vote, is it okay if you introduce them maybe? Lovely.
So, Mrs. Henners.
Yes.
This is, I'm sorry, the vote for
Yes.
Mrs. Mast,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay, Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes. Okay. We are going downstairs.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I understand.
Suppose we have to make some decisions. Do we pull item C out of the consent agenda? Just the contract. Because basically what we would be voting for is just the contract.
Well, I think the contract then officially makes him our auctioneer of
Right.
record. I don't think we need to put anything else, right?
Make sure in the middle of this, we needed to do something else when we get done.
I
They're
think
getting good. Yeah, yeah.
So we're back in general session.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good,
thank
thanks,
you.
Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so I will be looking for a motion. Items 6 through 8.
So
Consent
moved?
agenda.
Yep,
Thank you
so
very
moved.
much.
Second?
typing a note there. Hartley made the
Second?
second.
Yes.
I first, Stacy second. Okay.
This is Hartley.
Yes.
This is Mast.
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So item 10. Dr. Pat.
Yeah, so item 10 is a first reading of policies, and there's, well, you guys can read them, but notification of meeting, college credit plus, health curriculum, and then reporting child abuse. These are all, as we reviewed them with and dyslexia intervention supports. As we reviewed them with the administrative team and then with Ms. Hinners with policy support, they're all basically legal update or legislative updates, so compliance with the law. But if there's any questions, we can answer them. Okay.
I just had a question about, so we did the consent agenda,
Yes.
but we didn't have any discussion if anyone had any questions about any of the items under the consent. Is that,
I'll do it again.
okay, I'm just,
You can certainly
I just
have
had,
that discussion.
I just had a couple, I just
I
had a question.
apologize. That's fine. Yeah. I should
Okay.
write myself a note in here to remind myself.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
again.
okay, that's all right.
Any
The only question I had was, Paul, you had mentioned that we need to be very serious about looking into a levy. And I guess I'd like some direction as to, is that we need to start planning now for next year, or we need to start planning now for November?
I don't want to be negative, but
I just want you,
I
just-
think we
yeah,
have
give us
to
some-
assume that possibly it's not going to pass the first time, just based on recent history. And there isn't going into next year an immediate need to cut programs or anything. And possibly even 2025, we can, depend, solid about 25. Although if everything stays as it is now, in fiscal 25, things are going to get very thin. So when our cash cycle dips, which is January and February, it would be tough to make all of our obligations, where you're kind of choosing. I mean, you have to pay payroll, so other people, but so when you think of the lag, you put the levy on and then you collect the money. It should be. I mean, it has to be within the next 12 months, I guess.
So we at least have a year to plan for this. I mean, because I think that's kind of what we communicated, probably when we were in the process of interviewing yourself and Dr. Tapman, is that we really felt to run a good levy, push, we need a year to really get the word out and get committees and get buy-in because I don't think we've done that for a while, had a really solid push.
Next spring would be feasible. Or
Historically, I think the district has passed in May 83% or 86% of its levies. So ideally, that is when. So
When do we need to file for something like that if we want to do next May?
not soon. I mean, I'll let you know
Okay.
as far as all that.
Okay.
In the past, it's like February.
Okay. I just want to miss
But
any windows.
internally, even before, I think we should talk about how we're going to go on the ballot. It's like what type of. My dream was that we could hold off and do operating building, like the facility, like when we've decided on the master facility. Unless the auction offsets the cost of the renovations and everything, I don't think we have that time. So I don't think we cannot afford to start thinking about the operating lobby and how we want to do it. Whether it's, there's different types, and I'll provide literature on options. I'm meeting with Baird today, and we're gonna maybe I'll ask him to come to our meeting. He's I don't mean right at this meeting or next, but we need to. It's a priority. It's not something really nobody ever wants to go on the ballot, but when you look at where we're heading, it's a definite need.
Well, I see about a 16% uptick between this fiscal year and next fiscal year forecasted. What's it attributable to? Where we go from 15.8 in total expenditures to 18.4.
I'll have to pull that out.
I think part of that is the capital improvement projects that we're projecting with the renovation at the high school and the movement of out of this building into Woodlands and things like that.
So all in, right, because of, I think the number, it was somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 million, which would include all of the projects, not just the high school. I mean, I think the Woodlands is pretty self-contained within the safety grant, but there are other renovations to the classrooms that need to be done. $1 million plus on the high school projects. The actual move itself between the moving company, and then we're gonna have a summer crew and the supplies and other things. So around 1.2 to 1.4, all in for closing down Shawnee and moving. And the wild card is then the revenue that we will earn from.
None of that's been, there's no assumptions that have been factored in.
No.
Right now, that number is zero
No.
in this forecast. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
So that 1.6, and again, this is the lump sum where I'm thinking of all of our revenue, grants, the federal funding, is all one pot. So whatever we get from it's not like we can, but for now we should just think of like the one pot and how it's the restricted nature of some of the money. But so I might be here in November, and that what's a 1.6 deficit right now might be dead even. It could be wiped out. But even so let's move past that though to the following year. That's accurate to where we're the 900. We're back on the pace because now we're looking at post-COVID money and the reality of where we were before that money started. How many years that reflects money that at the end of levy. So I think we should discuss, the different options of how we want to move forward with going on the ballot, whether it's property, city. The school has never had an income tax. And pros and cons, it's tough. If you look at the community and our goal is to get it passed, it's something to be considered. I think it's been on the ballot twice and it hasn't been close either time in the last So,
I mean, income has been on the ballot twice.
so
Okay.
I think
I think they're,
Not-
they
No.
entertained.
The school has not. The city does income tax, the school has not. They talked about it at the last time, but decided not to put it on and went with the traditional.
all right. I mean, it's,
I don't, but.
so on paper, again,
yeah.
we're a high income community. When it goes by federally adjusted gross income, which that means you would never want to do an income tax because people will vote no. But we are also a community that's now dominated by people that are close to or are retired, and that does become very palatable for them. So there's different things to consider, and I think we should look at them all. I don't. Go ahead. Do you want to?
No, if I could just add, so our fiscal year runs from July to June, so it splits over 2 calendar years. Whatever levy we put on, it doesn't start collecting. You guys know this, but I just want to repeat it for the audience. It doesn't start collecting until January of that next year. So, for example, if we went on the ballot in November of 2023, we start collecting in 24. That covers half of the first fiscal year that it's collected. You don't reap the full benefit of that tax income until the second fiscal year that the item was passed. November 7th is our next election. The filing date for that is July 25th. I'm reading this off of a resource from Berkler and Eckler. The following March of 24 is a presidential primary election. Ohio likes to have value in that process. So our election date is actually March 19th, which makes the earliest filing date December 4th. So still, that's kind of earlier than what we might assume. And then we go to that presidential election in November of 2024 with a July 8th filing date. So that, to me, allows time for discussion, engagement with the community, building understanding for the need. That would bring us revenue in our fiscal year 25 half, and then fiscal year 26 the full year.
For the facilities and an operating, at least you can have a plan and like a sequence to tell the community, like, here's what we're planning and when. I will tell you, I get statistically that like May and August are like better months to run levies and to run it as a special election because the thought is you're going to get low voter turnout. I think it's a cynical way to look at it because you're kind of setting it up to have the least amount of community participation, and that's what has, frankly, that's what would have been bet on in the past, and it hasn't proven to be successful here. And so while I get like the numbers say that we normally, the last one I think was in May, you know, because I think voters they don't love that feeling that like somebody's trying to jam a levy down their throat in an off election, and hope that they don't realize it's happening. So for what it's worth, I think the presidential election, man, there's no better time to go to the polls than that, you know. And I don't think anybody would accuse us of trying to, you know, pass a levy without their participation.
And I also think too, you know, we have to think about the cost of going to the voters on an off
Special election.
I mean, it's expensive. I mean, if we're the only entity that's going for something on the ballot, we pay for everything.
Well,
And
and
it's
in
expensive.
a presidential primary year, we wouldn't have
Right.
that, right?
Right.
Like, it would be
Right.
a fairly
Right.
big, but it is also a partisan election, so you still don't get, obviously, as many as with a general election. In a presidential, you'll have your biggest voter
But
turnout.
it's just something to think about.
Sure.
You know, it's costly.
I didn't bring up next spring for low participation, just for the record. I was thinking timing wise,
Yeah.
we'd have time because the reason the last levy failed so heartily, I think we all kind of discussed and agreed, is because the communication was broken, and we're working, I think, diligently to build up communication and hopefully trust, and that might be a nice time frame to work with. So
I wasn't suggesting that you were,
No,
because
no.
I think you're right. That would be the earliest we could be talking about, just to get our communication act together, would be spring of next year as opposed to like fall of this year, which
Yeah,
would just
that
be.
seems rushed, especially with
Right.
all the stuff.
And I think that's, I like hearing that, although I'm pressing, like, we need a plan now. I don't want the end product to be that we rushed to the ballot, and I don't want it, we don't need to use scare tactics. You know, the threat of cutting programs or, you know, staff or whatever. The numbers are, they justify the need. It's, I mean, years. For years, it's been a pattern, so.
We have quite a bit to talk about tonight. I think this has been very good discussion, and maybe we can really actively put some discussion on work session or make it part of the next meeting to
Absolutely.
I'd love to get finance committee together again, maybe, if we did that, and we could talk through, because I have some questions too. I want to understand what are all the variables, like I asked you about the fiscal year 2027, when the revenue drops off so much. So understanding the different variables like that things would fall off, but what are other things? If there are valuations of
And
other
that'll be-
large commercial properties that we know might be coming in. We talked about this property. If we're able to put this property back into the tax base to help offset a number of properties that are being taken out of the tax base in the last 12 to 18 months, you know, that it's not going to do everything and offset, but it could potentially help offset some of the losses that we are suffering when properties are continually taken out of the tax base.
I agree, and some of this will be reflected in next month's forecast when that comes out. Did you want to get together before, after the first meeting in May, but before?
Follow up. Yeah.
Okay.
I just within the athletic code of conduct, I took a look at it, and there's two things. On page 4, part 4, there's a typo, which I think just could easily be fixed. In the second title down, it says pre-offense only self-referral for substance abuse violations and substances spelled wrong. It's silly, but
I'll fix
easy
that.
fix.
Yep.
And then I was kind of surprised that there's no mention of cheating offenses in here. And there is the opportunity to cheat in sports. It came up last year, and there is more than just the sport of golf that you can cheat in. So I was wondering if that could potentially be added.
Yeah, we could definitely add that. So let me look at that. Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Your representative report. Does anybody have anything? I don't have anything earth shattering. So at this time, then, so is there anything else?
I was gonna brought to Lucy just because you're here. It's like I would love maybe, and you can take this back to the student council. Like I think it'd be cool, you know, if you guys had. And it doesn't have to be like an assignment, but we'd love to know like what you're working on at student council, or like what's important or coming up, or maybe something that like isn't necessarily something student council can solve, but maybe it's something that you guys are bringing on behalf of the student body, and you think it's maybe something we can. I just think that the whole idea of this partnership is for us to have like connectivity with you guys, and vice versa, for you to understand like where all the magic happens here. But
And Lucy, if you have your Chromebook and want to bring it, the documents that we're talking about are all available on there. So then you can follow. That's what we're all doing, is following along in real time and actually looking at the contracts and the agreements and things to be able to know what we're talking about. We're like, oh, on item 8, there's this.
We actually do it kind of as homework beforehand, which is super helpful, because otherwise it feels like, what is everybody talking about? An example, like, of getting the student body involved, like going forward in the new building, just around at how like life could be improved, your education experience could be improved, and making some suggestions. I'm not saying that we're going to honor all of them, but it would be really lovely. Like
so the hot tubs
the hot tubs are out, but maybe like the salad bar came up when I was talking with the 8th grade class, and that's really probably feasible. So like things like that. I don't know.
There's an article we can get you to that was in our state association publication, specifically about 3 districts that have had a student representative for a long time. So it kind of talked about some of the things that they talk about and look at and do. There was one that, can't even remember what it was. They created like a QR code and had some student survey. So then they were really, it was posted all around the schools, and students were going on and kind of giving some feedback on a particular, there was some project that was really interesting to students. So we can get you a copy of that if you would like that.
You know.
It's important.
Add some government.
Thanks again for being here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. Anything else? All right. Okay, so need a motion to go into executive session for reason of personnel matters, and it would just be the 5 board members at this time.
You need a motion?
Yes.
So moved?
Mrs. Mast,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay, Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Yes.
By the way, Paul, good work on the new board docs.
John, do you want to advise
It
whether
needs
you
some
think
more
there's
work,
action
but
afterwards or not?
we'll keep trying. We have a follow-up
Or just
Nice.
as a courtesy?
in a couple weeks to get feedback. And
Sure.
I'll tell Williams on the way out.
Well, for the public too, if anybody's watching, whether they can.
That's, yeah, I do not foresee any action
Okay.
other than update meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out.
We had some of the money from the ad. Did you
Um,
cover that? Or?
Just make it up here in high school.
Do I owe somebody money still from the Susical ad. Did you cover that?
Have you let him know?
Luann collected the money, so
You've been in touch with Dane.
someone covered it. If you have a check, you can look at it.
I have $20.
I can take it. I'll give it to Luann. Yep.
You show up with a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, Williams.
Like you can buy a $20 pair of shoes.
Okay, I'll make sure.
Yeah, no, it occurred to me last night, and I was like, oh man, somebody probably thinks I'm a jerk.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night. We're coming back in here, right?
How was that day? Listen, you did see me.
more like the community. Yeah.